Theresa May seeks to turn Brexit from a slogan into a strategy for action. She tells the Cabinet work is underway for a clean break without compromise. A tailor-made solution for Britain.
We're going to make a success of it. That means there's no second referendum, no attempts to sort of stay in the EU by the back door. We're actually going to deliver on this.
Also this lunchtime, a doubling of discrimination cases against pregnant working women prompts a call for better protection. The mother of the murdered backpacker in Australia talks of her loss and her pride. And with a week to go, what prospects for a successful Paralympic Games? And what chance of glory for the British squad?
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Alistair Stewart.
Good afternoon. The holidays may be over, but the break didn't bridge the differences over Brexit. Today, Theresa May summoned the Cabinet to Chequers to put an end to that by drawing up a roadmap for the UK's departure from the EU. She confirmed that there'd be no second referendum and no chance for MPs to reject the result, but she went further, ruling out any in and out solution like that enjoyed by Norway. Music to the ears of the hardline Brexiteers, perhaps. Not so for others, as political correspondent Paul Brand reports.
They arrived in their separate cars at Chequers this morning, choosing this isolated Tudor mansion to decide how Britain now goes it alone in the 21st century. The Prime Minister assembled her cabinet fresh from their summer break for the first detailed discussion of our departure from the EU.
We will have an update on Brexit. We'll be looking at the next steps that we need to take, but we'll also be looking at the opportunities that are now open to us as we forge a new role for the UK in the world.
Once again, the Prime Minister promised Brexit means Brexit. The challenge now to put some meat on that mantra. The man who sat alongside her predecessors as head of the civil service says the task is bigger than any he ever faced.
I'm hoping they'll make a lot of progress in terms of coming up with what do they mean by Brexit. Prime Minister said Brexit means Brexit. Everyone knows that we voted to leave, so that's where we're going. The question is, what kind of Brexit?
The key issue is whether we stay in the EU's single market and keep free trade, with some cabinet ministers divided over whether that's worth giving up control over immigration and perhaps paying into the EU's budget. All questions those on the Remain side think the Brexiteers really should have answered by now.
Their plan for life outside the European Union, or indeed a path that might take us outside the European Union, which would damage the UK as little as possible, is non-existent.
But many a chapter in history has been written here at Chequers. The Cabinet won't be short of inspiration, at least, as they try to pen the next one. Paul Brand, ITV News.
Well, our political correspondent Carl Dinnan is outside Chequers, which you just saw a fantastic aerial shot of. Do we have any more clues, Carl, as to what the Prime Minister actually thinks Brexit will look like?
Well, we do have a clue, Alistair, about what she thinks it does not look like. Just before her cabinet meeting started here at Chequers, she had phone conversations with the Finnish and, crucially, the Norwegian Prime Ministers. Now, Norway, of course, is not part of the EU, but there is this Norwegian model which allows access, freedom of access to the single market, but has to accept in return freedom of movement of labour and the EU rules. It had been speculated that Britain might follow some sort of Norwegian model. In her phone call today, the Prime Minister said explicitly that Britain should find the best way for Britain to leave the EU and not necessarily follow an existing model. So that seems to rule out that Norwegian model, which will be music to the ears of those hardliners in the cabinet, people like David Davis and Liam Fox, who campaigned for Brexit. Because, of course, this is a split cabinet. There are others who campaigned for Britain to stay in the EU, like Amber Rudd, like the Chancellor, Philip Hammond. So this meeting isn't just about working out what Brexit means, it's also about uniting the government around whatever that strategy turns out to be.
Carl, thank you. Pregnant women and mothers need more protection in the workplace after research by MPs revealed a shocking increase in discrimination against them. According to the Commons Women and Equalities Committee, 1 in 10 pregnant women or new mothers have been sacked, been made redundant or forced out of the workplace due to poor treatment. Well, they're proposing a German-style system which bans employers from making new mothers redundant. Olivia Kinsley has more.
Oh, my thing is on. We're getting our issues for you, baby.
2 years ago, Fiona Chow had her first child, a boy called Maximus. Before going on maternity leave, she worked at a big multinational company and planned to go back full-time.
2 weeks before I was due to return, I was called into the office for a meeting, and at that meeting I was told that they were going to be restructuring my department, and as a result my role would be made redundant. Prior to that, all my appraisals were stellar, talking about promoting me the next year, and the only material change between then and being told my role was being made redundant was the fact that I had a baby.
Now a group of MPs is demanding that the government come up with an urgent plan to stop women like Fiona feeling victimised. Their report claims there's been a shocking increase in discrimination over the past decade. It cites statistics that the number of expectant and new mothers forced to leave their jobs has doubled to 54,000 last year, and that 11% reported being dismissed, made redundant or felt forced out.
In the same way as we've introduced stronger rights to request flexible working, shared parental leave, we now need to modernise the support that's given to pregnant women, and this is long overdue.
One idea is to copy the German model, which bans employers from making women redundant during and for 4 months after pregnancy. Fiona's not sure that would work.
All it is really is a sticking plaster over the root problem, which is this sort of systemic problem around the roles of men and women and gender inequality within that. But more damaging and more pervasive is that insidious discrimination that women who are of a childbearing age face. So the lack of opportunities, the kind of assumption that you're going to be less motivated once you have a baby, all of which I know from personal experience can be rubbish.
Today, more women are working than ever before. There's no reason progress should stop when they have children. Olivia Kinsley, ITV News.
And I'm joined live in the studio now by Lisa Barnwell, the founder of Bumps and the Boardroom, which was set up to challenge and change the way businesses approach its pregnant staff and members. Good of you to come in.
Thank you.
You know better than anybody else that a lot of small and medium-sized enterprises are going to say, we'd like to do the right thing, but it's disruptive and it's expensive.
I think basically we need to reframe the way that we perceive pregnancy and look at it differently. We need to unlock the female talent that we have in our workforce and really just look at pregnancy in a very different way to what we do now.
That it can be an added bonus rather than being seen as a costly incumbency if you're trying to run a business in what can be tough times.
Absolutely. You've got to look at the long-term picture. You've got to look at the fact that you want to have women rising in the workplace, that you want to have women in boardrooms, that we want to have women part of the workforce. And so we need to look at it in the same way we've done with the Olympics. We've invested and we've looked at it in a long-term way. We need to do the same with maternity.
It's very interesting. I noticed in your website when I was researching this before coming down that you also talk about the need to empower women to believe in their worth. So in a sense, self-doubt can be as big a problem as sexism in the workplace.
Absolutely. We've got to educate not only businesses but women themselves so that they really feel the transition to pregnancy and the transition and journey to motherhood is so powerful that they can really sort of get the value out of that.
Yeah. You've had a chance to look through what Maria Miller and her committee are actually talking about. Interesting, we were both watching it together. The woman in the film there talked about it just being a sticking plaster if we adopt the German solution. Is that your view? Would you want to go further? And if so, how far?
Absolutely. We've got to just completely reframe the way that we look at things. We've got to really have a new way of understanding maternity, really get to the heart of what happens during that journey, really understand what happens when women become pregnant. Because, as was said, women do come back feeling more empowered, more excited about what they're doing. They connect more to what they want to be doing. So we're perceiving women to be one way when actually they're coming back more ambitious and more excited and making a better stand in the workplace.
Lisa Barnwell, good to meet you. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. Now, junior doctors are expected to announce further strikes later today as their battle over a new contract continues. Members of the British Medical Association are meeting in central London this lunchtime to discuss their next move. Martha Fairley is outside BMA House for us live at the moment. More reports at the moment that this new raft of strikes could last longer than the last lot.
That's right. You'll remember earlier this year, junior doctors walked out on a series of strikes that lasted between 24 and 48 hours after they failed to come to an agreement with the government over a proposed new contract. Now, after a revised contract was also rejected by the junior doctors, the government in July said they were simply going to impose the contract. That starts in October. And so this afternoon, senior BMA officials will be meeting here to discuss further industrial action. A leaked report suggests that could involve walkouts from 8 in the morning till 5 in the evening for up to 5 days in a row. Now, the BMA officially has said it should come as no surprise that the BMA Council are discussing the issue of further industrial action, but at this stage, no decisions have been made. Well, it's thought that if these walkouts do go ahead, they'll start on the 12th of September and continue with one walkout every month for the rest of this year, causing far more disruption to patients with cancelled operations and appointments than we saw earlier this year.
Martha, thank you. The chief strategist and spokesman for the so-called Islamic State has been killed in Syria. Media affiliated with the militant group say Abu Mohammed al-Adnani died in Aleppo, which has been targeted by US airstrikes. And Donald Trump will meet the president of Mexico later. The US presidential hopeful has repeatedly criticized Mexican migrants during his campaign and has promised to build a wall along the border between the two countries. The mother of a British backpacker who was stabbed to death at an Australian hostel has spoken about how she feels pity for her daughter's killer. Rosie Alif made the comment in Australia, where she had travelled to collect her daughter Mia's ashes. Sejal Karia reports.
Mia Alif Chung went to Australia for adventure. A free spirit living the dream, friends said. But just months into her trip, she was dead, killed in a backpacker's hostel 10,000 miles from home. In her first TV interview, her mother Rosie said her loss is being felt deeply by all who knew her.
She could see the good in everything and everyone. She was a special girl. She had qualities that some of us could only aspire to.
Mia was killed in a hostel popular with fruit pickers in Queensland in front of 30 backpackers. Fellow Briton Tom Jackson tried to protect her, but he was stabbed 20 times, later dying of his injuries. 29-year-old Frenchman Shmail Ayed has been charged with murder. Whoever is responsible for killing Mia, her mother wants them to feel remorse.
If he is capable of contrition and of realising what he's done, I feel pity for him, because he now has to live knowing that he's killed two beautiful, strong, exceptional people. He has to live with that.
Her mother feels that Mia was lent to her for a period of time and for a reason. She says she now wants to spend time finding out what that reason is. Sejal Karia, ITV News.
Still to come, a surreal standoff in Los Angeles as singer Chris Brown resists arrest for 11 hours. And the head of the British Paralympics Association on his hopes for another Golden Games in Rio. But first, girls in the UK are becoming increasingly unhappy with their lives, according to new research, with growing concerns about physical appearance. The Children's Society has found 1 in 3 teenage girls are not confident with how they look, and children as young as 3 years old are feeling those pressures too. Charlotte Grant has more.
I feel like pressured in having like all these clothes and you have to look good. It's hard.
If you're in like year 9 and you've got like a flat chest, you're like more likely to get bullied. That's what it's like now.
They are some of the voices of a new generation, where the pressures of growing up means as many as 250,000 girls describe themselves as unhappy, especially when it comes to struggling with how they look.
All these people in magazines and stuff like Kim Kardashian, and you see them like with these like
hairstyles.
Yeah. like everything,
and
boobs and stuff
yeah,
like that.
That's like the new thing. You have to have a big bum and a big boob to be like famous.
A survey by the Children's Society suggests 1 in 7 girls aged 10 to 15 are unhappy with their lives. But that rises when asked about their appearance, with 1 in 3 saying they're unhappy. While another study suggests concerns over looks can begin as young as 3 years old. Why girls are struggling isn't clear, but the Children's Society says the fact girls spend more time on social media than boys could affect mental health. They believe school is the answer and is calling on the government to bring in a legal right for children to have access to someone trained in mental health at school. But not everyone agrees.
Children will say that they do want people in school, be it counsellors or school nurses, to be able to help them as problems develop. I don't know if it needs a law to do that, but certainly I think it's a great role for schools to play there.
That might be a new trend now.
Growing up can be tough, but the focus is on making sure that more young girls have less to worry about. Charlotte Grant, ITV News.
6 teenagers have been arrested over the death of a Polish man in a suspected hate crime. The 40-year-old died from head injuries in what police described as a vicious attack outside a row of takeaway shops in Harlow in Essex on Saturday night. This lunchtime, the Polish ambassador to the UK has been to visit the scene. House prices have risen in August despite predictions of a post-Brexit slump. The average house price rose 0.6%, which was higher than the monthly gain in June. And England's goalkeeper Joe Hart has completed his move to Torino on a season-long basis. The move comes on a frenetic day for football clubs, with the deadline for transfers tonight. For the first time this summer, spending among Premier League clubs has passed the £1 billion mark. In the United States, the singer Chris Brown has been arrested after allegedly pointing a gun at a guest at his Los Angeles home. Brown's arrest on suspicion of assault with a deadly weapon came after an 11-hour standoff with police. Suzanne Verdi reports.
Police were called to the multi-millionaire pop star's mansion in Los Angeles, who's seen here in the white T-shirt, after a woman called them in the early hours of yesterday morning asking for help. Officers surrounded the star's sprawling estate and a tense 14-hour standoff began. During that time, Chris Brown posted several videos on the social network site Instagram, criticising police and saying he'd done nothing wrong.
What I do care about is y'all defacing my name as a person and my character and integrity.
Brown has won a string of awards, including a Grammy for his work, but it's his life outside the recording studio that often draws more attention. He hit the headlines in 2009 after he assaulted his then-girlfriend, pop star Rihanna, and only last year finished a lengthy term of probation, community service and domestic violence classes. In this latest incident, the 27-year-old pop star was finally arrested after officers obtained a search warrant.
He will be transported by RHD detectives to Robbery Homicide Division, where he is going to be booked for ADW, assault with a deadly weapon.
Brown has been released on $250,000 bail while investigations continue. Suzanne Verdi, ITV News.
The excitement after Team GB's historic medal tally at the Olympic Games may be a fading memory, but now the world is turning its attentions to the Paralympics starting in Rio next week. All this week, ITV News is highlighting the courageous stories of those who've beaten adversity to compete for Great Britain. One such athlete is the paracyclist Megan Gelia. 3 years ago, she had a stroke which left her partly paralysed down her right side. She took up cycling as part of her recovery and has become so successful that she's already won a double gold at the World Championships this year. And she's had to overcome some extraordinary hurdles to be part of the Paralympics.
Some days I can be walking fine, maybe, and just look like I've got a limp. Other days I'm on a crutch, 2 crutches. I have to use like a kid's push scooter to get me around some days. And then there's other days where I'm in a wheelchair.
Well, joining me now live is the head of British Paralympics Association, Tim Hollingsworth. I'm delighted that we chose Megan as one of our examples this week, because it makes the point that it's not only people who are born with disabilities. This can hit you at any time in your life.
Absolutely. You can have acquired disability at any time, any day, in any way. And it's a factor of our team that we see a wide range of impairments come to the fore. But of course, equally, they're all athletes and they're all competing and they're all trying to win.
Yeah, and we saw last night the fencing story, which was brilliant. We've seen cycling today. But when we ended the Olympics in the euphoria of the medals, we were also hearing worries about ticket sales, worrying about budgets, venues and what have you. How fares it now for these Paralympic Games?
Well, with 7 days to go, we've got a lot in place now in support of our team. The bits that we can control, I feel, both in the village where the athletes will live and in and around Rio. But it's true to say that there are still some challenges there, particularly around transport. But we'll deal with all of that for our athletes. And the ticket sales are picking up.
Give us a barometer sense of that. What was the hope in terms of ticket sales and where we stand now?
Well, the hope a while ago was that after London, when we sold every seat going, we'd carry that journey on. I think now things are well over halfway, and that's in part thanks to the reaction of the world when it became apparent that Brazilian Paralympic Games tickets were not selling well. Yeah. I think they are very much more available to the local carioca in Brazil. There's also a great initiative called Fill the Seats to allow people to buy tickets internationally for local people to go to the Games.
And can these athletes put all of that behind them and just focus on competing and winning? What's the mood in the team?
Yeah, no, the mood is very good and very strong. That's the fact, is that the athletes are there to compete and we hope to win. They're there after 4 years of hard slog. Yeah. They're not going to let other things get in the way. They also know that some things are beyond their control, but they can, in the words of a cyclist, pedal the bike as fast as they can go. That's the bit that they'll be most interested in, and that's all we want them to be focused on.
And in a sentence, you know what I mean. Legacy?
Well, legacy is very much part of the agenda from London. How can we keep this incredible transformational movement in the public eye? Mostly, it's about the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, winning medals, making the nation proud. But beyond that, it's about continuing that discussion and development of people's understanding of disability and indeed what's possible.
All right, Tim, good to see you. Good luck to all of them. Thank you. That is it this lunchtime. I'll be back with Mary Nightingale with the ITV Evening News when that cabinet meeting at Chequers should have finally drawn to a close. The news where you are follows the national weather, but for now, from all of us on the Lunchtime News team, bye-bye.